So, first off, hi, my name is Victor. Uh, I grew up here in Caledonia, Michigan. Little town, born in the city, raised in a farmhouse that was really old. A lot of property, but it was my grandmother's house actually. And my mom just decided, well, my mom lived there, and my grandmother, her mom, moved out eventually. Um, it was an older house, like I said, and uh, it was cool. My family actually held it in for a long time, and my grandparents' parents, or so on, built it themselves. So it meant a lot to us, but it was also falling apart, and my parents weren't in the best position to take care of it. My mother and my father both worked minimum wage jobs. Taco Bell was the one that stood out to me the most. My mom would go in the morning sometimes, and then my dad would go in the evening. Someone was always home, but the only food that was actually present was usually tacos, and there's only so much Taco Bell your system can handle. To this day, I don't think I've gone back to Taco Bell more than once or twice. But my mom took care of us a lot because of my parents. Both of them struggled with addictions. My mom was mostly she liked drinking wine to escape the problem of my dad, who drank a lot of vodka or beer or whatever it was he could get his hands on. And I mean, whatever, because there was a time where he drank mouthwash just to get the alcohol. He had a serious problem, and he was even abusive at times. But yeah, this lasted throughout my entire schooling prior to graduating high school. Through elementary, I tried to make friends really hard and failed a lot of the times because while other kids were hanging out at their friends' houses, I didn't want anyone to come over because I didn't want them to meet my dad. And the only person I bonded with was my brother, who we have conflicting personalities. It's always been interesting between us. And yeah. Go into middle school, I had the first major event of my life that kind of changed everything. I grew up in a Catholic church. Mother decided that for herself. My dad grew up there, marrying together. They were good Catholic parents, but my grandmother was the one that actually inspired them to go and kept them going. She was super devout. She was super involved in the church. Everyone knew who she was. And then she got cancer. And long fight with it, she didn't make it through cancer. My family kind of fell apart. A lot of relatives kind of distanced themselves off. Even my sister left for a long time. And my mom couldn't handle it, so we stopped going to church. Later on, well, that was 6th grade, and after that, yeah, God was there. I believed in him. I knew he existed, and I knew he was a part of my life. I knew he was involved in making sure my family got through struggles because we were broke. We didn't have money, and there were nights I didn't know if I was gonna eat. My parents obviously tried to hide that, but it was definitely obvious when the best you could do is a hamburger on a hot dog bun. So 6th grade, church falls out, and I still don't have friends. I don't really know what to do, and I just shut myself out. I grew up with mental illnesses of just being bipolar, not actually that major, it's not noticeable to a lot of people. I also have ADHD, which is why I'm usually hyperactive. That was enough, and my parents were so worried about me because after my grandmother died, I just shut everyone out. They placed me in special education. Well, put someone who happens to be, not to brag, but above average intelligence when it comes to schoolwork into special education when they're already feel vulnerable about who they are and whether they're going to be accepted by people, they don't usually react too well. I shut myself out even more. I rebelled. I hated school at that point. I used to love it. There was second grade, I had days where I got sick and I actually begged my mom if I could go. Sixth grade started what became the point where I told everyone, hey, I'm not feeling well today. I want to go home. Hey mom, I'm not feeling well today. Do I have to go to school? And I was able to skip a lot of it. So much that every semester I was required to pass the exam with a C or better, otherwise I failed the class. At the same time, I'm no longer doing my homework, and school in general, I'm not making friends, I'm not trying, I don't care about it. It was just something I kept doing. And without God, I had absolutely nothing there. Eventually I actually did graduate, year 2013, and I barely remember any of it because I blacked it out. I can't stand the memories. Never made a friend. My graduation party, I invited 200 people out of desperation, and no one I invited came. Only family, which looked about 7 people. Had an entire church rented out. That was kind of an awkward evening. Obviously not doing my homework, passing just by the bare minimum. I didn't have good grades, I didn't have scores, I didn't have scholarships offered to me. College looked like a no-go. So I got a job, and it was within walking distance of my new apartment because my family had been kicked out of our house, evicted. After my grandmother died, my mom couldn't keep up with the bills, and eventually we had to leave our gorgeous old rustic house that was falling apart at the same time. So this new apartment, decided to walk to work, worked at a little pizza place, just a local one, and met the first people that I would actually bother to remember. One girl and one guy stood out the most, but they didn't really matter until quite a bit after that. I left that job, and eventually I ended up in a factory position thinking that was the pinnacle of my life. I was going to be there for the rest of it and live out my days making toothpaste, because it was a toothbrush factory. When you smell like mint every day after work, it does things to you. It's not the worst smell, but it still does things. And I worked second shift. Anyone who works a factory job or any kind of blue collar work will know that second and third shift even more so, changes how you socialize with people or your opportunities to do things in life. In this case for me, it meant I'd wake up late in the morning, around 10, and I'd have a few hours to get ready and go to work, and I worked, and then I came home and slept. That was it. And at this point in my life, I have had no real social experience. I've had no chance to really get to know what kind of person I am, and I thought I was an introvert. Just because I was nervous to go and hang out with whoever invited me, or talking to this person scared me because I had faced so much rejection. And after that, All right. After a while of working at that factory, I kind of broke down. It was one of the worst breakdowns of my life. I got into a fight with my mom, started blaming her for everything, told her I didn't want to go to work that day and I didn't want to go ever again. I was quitting and I wasn't going to give a notice. Well, she challenged me, and lo and behold, I responded by doing what she did not expect me to do. And I called work and I actually told them, hey, I quit. I'm never coming back. And then I literally walked out. I had to walk because I was 20 years old at this point and I still didn't know how to drive. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't know what to do with my life. I remember walking down this one bike path for hours, and at the end of it, I was probably hallucinating, and I just broke down crying. Didn't have my phone on me or anything. Well, walking out of your house, even at 20 years old, can scare your parents when they don't know where you're going. And my mom noticed that I was not in a good spot, so she was out looking for me, and my sister was out looking for me. Eventually, my sister found me. My sister was just starting to connect with the rest of my family again. She now has 4 kids of her own and a husband that I didn't really know because they grew up without me. Well, she decided to start teaching me how to drive, and she started letting me just come over to get out of my own house and think about what I wanted. And that was the first step in me actually going and getting something I wanted. And then my family started going back to church, to our Catholic church, and my brother happened to get really connected with everyone. I still couldn't, for who knows why, make connections with people. But he found out about Davenport, and he decided to start going there. Accounting major. Well, I happen to still have that competitive edge and awkward relationship with my brother, but I was like, well, he's going to college, and I'm still doing this. I'm doing actually nothing because I had quit my factory job. I'm just living off my parents. Well, when he got in, he started in, when did he start? I don't even know. I just knew a semester afterwards I had been accepted into Davenport and started going in winter of 2016. So I guess that would have made his fall 2015 irrelevant now, but 2016 that winter, I had a professor for it's called ACES at Davenport University. It's pretty much freshman 101, how to be a college student. I needed that because it was 3 years after I graduated, and I was like, homework, how do we do that again? I didn't think I remember doing any of it to begin with. And this time I wanted to actually try. I was set, I wanted to do something with my life. I didn't know what. I was constantly changing my major. I think I was in business for at least a week. Didn't matter because I was taking all general classes. But that ACES class, that freshman 101, I had a professor who actually kind of changed my life. She noticed that I was really awkward, and she noticed that I wanted to talk, but I didn't. I sat in the front of the class, but I stayed silent, and eventually one morning when I came to class 20 minutes early, like I always did because I was excited to be there for some reason, she asked me how my day was going. She asked me about my life, and I kind of got to know her as well, and I was excited. Someone cared. Someone that didn't have to care about me had actually cared about me. So I started being more adamant. I need to be at this class. I need to do well in this class. I read every chapter of the textbook for that class, and I don't know about the rest of the college students in the world, but reading textbooks is painful and no one actually wants to do that, and most of the time when no one wants to do that, they just don't do that. So that was crazy for me, someone who graduated high school with a 1.9 GPA was now doing his best to get an A. And I did. Every challenge that was put in front of me, I was like, I need to do this. I need to try it. So I got all A's my first semester, 4.0 GPA. Got offered into my first honor society, something I thought was outrageous for me in my life. And then decided, well, hey, I'm gonna go for a summer semester to make up for my fall. Well, at this point, that girl I mentioned a little while ago, that from one of my first jobs, we would talk occasionally, and she had a friend that I never met, but I thought was really cute. Well, I just remember her last name, and I was looking at my professors for that semester, and lo and behold, this cute girl's last name, which is not a common one, was the same one as my professor. And I just looked around, and I then looked back at my phone and decided to text the one mutual friend that knew both of us, and was like, does this name mean anything to you? And she's like, yeah, that's Hannah's mom. Well, Hannah so happens to be that cute girl, and I was like, okay, well, sure, that's gonna be interesting. And I went to class, and through some weird coincidences, her mother figured out that I knew of Hannah and that I had some connection. She didn't really understand what kind of connection, or at least I didn't think so. But she would bring her up to me in class, and I thought that was, hey, kind of cool, kind of weird, definitely weird. And I still kept trying. Well, eventually summer semester ended. I got more A's. And then I moved on to my first brand new year. Everyone came back. It was fall. Everyone was just starting out, new semesters, new school year. At the end of the prior one, I attended this one little group. It was a Christian ministry on campus. I just had a few people nagging me. They were like, hey, you should come try this out. Well, hey, I'm a nerd, I'm going here. I like Star Wars, you do too, right? And I'm like, yeah, you should come here. And I did. And I went for the very last meeting. Didn't think it would ever be relevant again. And, well, at that new school year, I somehow ended up going back first day of their weekly meetings, and met a girl named Britt, who just happened to be like, hey, you're new, who are you? And kind of dragged me along, just introduced me to every single person, including some of them that I met that last week of the prior semester, and I kind of latched onto her, I'm gonna admit. It's like, this girl's nice, I'm gonna keep talking to her, gonna try to be friends with her. And I also looked at a few other people, and I'm like, I'm just gonna try to talk to them, to be friends with them, find out about their life, figure out what motivates them, see what happens. And I did. I actually had a weekly plan. Like, one week was, I'm gonna say hi to this girl after class and just try to walk with her to wherever she's going. Or this guy, I'm gonna get his phone number so we can start talking sometime. I had a laid out plan, and that still feels weird. Probably, hopefully never do that again, but I did it, and I actually made some amazing friends who are still in my life today. And they are honestly the first real friendships I've had. Like, looking back, there's the occasional acquaintance you talk to once or twice, but these people were interested and involved in my life, and when they saw me, they got excited, and when I saw them, I got excited. And I started to figure out, hey, I'm not really an introvert, I'm an extrovert. And it's just this Christian ministry, well, that just so happens to be where I was meeting them. I kept going every week. I got involved with small groups and their large group. Just any way I could, I was involved with this campus ministry, but I was still involved for a different reason than God. I was involved because I wanted to meet people. And that was how it stayed for a while. Until, weird happenstance, I ended up getting in contact with that Hannah girl. And we were like, hey, let's hang out. Let's go to a movie. Let's get dinner together. Didn't call it a date, obviously. That would be weird. But guess what? It was the day before Valentine's Day, and we were... I think the words I used were, let's be single together. Cheesy, but that's been my life. And things happened. We thought, hey, maybe we're gonna date. And then really, really fast after that, we're like, we're not dating. I was a little upset. Still confused of what was going on in her head, but she asked me, like, hey, do you still want to be friends? I think you're a cool guy. And I'm still in this awkward stage of, hey, I'm desperate for friends, so yeah. And we hung out. And semesters passed. That's how you tell time in college, is just by semesters. And eventually we stopped being friends because it's always weird to be friends with someone you were seriously interested in. It works sometimes, but other times it just doesn't. So I left it and was like, we can't do this anymore. And I started living my own life. Continued to make more friends, continued to get involved in more events, and then... So I messaged her, and she was just like, I miss you. And I kind of sat there and I'm like, I don't know if I feel that way, but I'm interested in what's going on in your life. So messaged a few more times, and then we decided to meet up again. See, just kind of a catch up, what's going on in your life, what's going on in mine. And I couldn't admit to myself, but I had a lot of fun. So at the end of it, she looked at me and was like, do you want to be friends again? And I'm like, sure. Just casual, sure, why not? My head is going, I'm never gonna date this girl. There is so much weird complications. The first time I thought about that, can't do it again. But I also got to this school dance. Colleges have those apparently. And one of my friends looked at me and was like, I challenge you to get a date to this. And lo and behold, I'm still really susceptible to challenges. I was like, I know someone who will say yes. Messaged Hannah, and I was like, hey, do you want to go to this formal dance with me? Just as friends, nothing more. She verified, she's like, yeah, as long as it's just as friends. But then we made a really big deal out of it. Matched colors, everything. I remember my mom was getting corsages for me and my brother because we're both going to the same college and occasionally run into each other, occasionally do the same things. And she's like, well, do you want to get a corsage for her? And I'm like, no, I can't do that. She might think this is more than just friends. So we didn't get corsages, we just had matching outfits. And we went to the dance, and my friends all looked at it and looked at us and looked at her and like, what's happening? I'm like, oh, nothing, it's just friends. Had another girl that I was interested in at one point asked me, like, hey, is she your girlfriend? And I'm like, haha, no. Laughed out loud, actually. I don't think Hannah heard me, but hey, maybe she did. And at the end of the night, one of my friends is like, well, if you're interested in her, you should make a move. You should try to do something. And I was like, no. And for a couple months, things kind of kept playing out. I was starting to go to church for my own self, but it was my Catholic church, and I was starting to play around with where I wanted my life to go. And I didn't realize it until a little bit after, but it was because every time Hannah talked to me, she just she'd want to know about my relationship with God. She had apparently rekindled her relationship with God and wanted to be closer with him and wanted the same thing for me. At the same time, I'm having a falling out with one of the good friends I had just made, and was like, this is gonna be one of my best friends for life. And that friend was yelling at me like, hey, you rely too much on the people in your life and not on God himself. And I'm like, well, I honestly don't really understand what a relationship with God looks like. Being raised Catholic, you're taught that your relationship is with God and no one else needs to be involved. And a lot of times that seems to take shape by not openly discussing your relationship with God. And I don't have anything against the Catholic Church, but a lot of it is founded in tradition. And no matter how hard I tried, I still couldn't get into it. And eventually, I was uncertain. At the same time, I'm hanging out with Hannah a lot more, and more, and more, and more. And eventually she's like, well, have you ever tried going to a different church? And I'm like, once or twice, didn't like them. And she asked me, well, would you be interested in coming to church with me? And I'm like, sure, why not? And I did. And at the same time, Hannah and I are also talking, hey, we're hanging out practically every day. Something's happening here, and what's going on? And we started to have our own relationship. Started to be more than just friends, even though I said I didn't want to, and she was uncertain about any kind of relationship. Well, I fell in love with her church, and I also foolishly fell in love with her, thinking, hey, they're one and the same. I was starting to pursue God, but I was starting to pursue God because I wanted to be with her. Well, I had been praying in that weird way you do, that you believe in God, but you don't actually really care. I'd always prayed, hey God, I want to fall in love, I want a family, I want a girlfriend that I can tell everything to and have that deep connection to, even though I really didn't understand what a relationship would look like. And surprise, surprise, he was giving that to me. But I wasn't getting the message it was so I could pursue him. And then, to me, almost out of nowhere, but at the same time I saw it coming, Hannah and I broke up. And I kind of lost it because I was like, well, God, what's happening? How am I supposed to get to know you and understand how can you love me and then take away something I love? And well, any parent can probably tell you that sometimes what you love doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you or what you actually need. And in trying to understand this, I started talking to a new friend And this friend started to point out that I need to chase God for myself. Obviously, this had been told to me multiple times over, but I kind of realized, hey, why do I actually want a relationship with God? And I started going to... The only thing I knew at this point was, well, a Catholic lifestyle wasn't for me. I wanted to actually experience that kind of relationship with God that I had seen others with, that I had seen Hannah with, that some of my best friends told me about and I seemed to ignore. And then at that point I'm like, well, I just broke up with this girl, but we're still kind of friends, so we're gonna keep going to church together. And then we're no longer friends, but where do I go? And I took a week off, and then I was like, I'm gonna keep going back to this church. And that's what I did. And lo and behold, I just started to feel differently about things. I was optimistic about the semester. I was optimistic about my life. Friendships that I didn't think I could actually make were becoming even easier to me. And life just started to look a little bit brighter. Well, at this point, things have completely fallen apart with even being friends with Hannah, and I'm starting to wonder where I'm gonna go, what my future relationship with God is gonna be, because I'm starting to love it. I'm doing devotions every day, and it's changing the way I think. And I don't know what to do now because I don't have a church to go to. I don't have someone to guide me. And then I actually sat down and had coffee with a friend, and I started talking about ways I wanted to be involved in or for God. And one of them was I always wanted to lead a small group. I don't really understand my own relationship with God, but when I'm talking to other people and telling them how I interpret the Bible, I start to feel more connected and I start to understand it better myself. So I wanted to lead a small group. Didn't work for me through that campus ministry. It didn't work for me at any of the churches I had gone to prior, but you know what was different? This friend was actually already involved in a small group, a ministry through another church. That church is called Ada Bible Church. So happens to be a couple campuses around Grand Rapids, the area I live. And he's like, well, you'd lead these middle schoolers or high schoolers. In my case, I ended up getting involved and leading middle schoolers. This was also exciting because I had always wanted to be more involved with kids. I love kids. I think they have a personality and just that blind glee. They can be excited about the simplest things, and I just wanted to be more involved with kids, hoping that one day when I become a father that I'm a lot better than my own dad. So this was hitting two birds with one stone. I was gonna lead a small group, I was gonna tell these kids about God, about Jesus, and then I was also going to build something I didn't think I would ever be able to build for myself right there. And I started that up, and it's crazy. These kids have more energy than I can believe, and I have a lot, and I can believe a lot. And then another thing happened. Obviously, a few years have passed at this point, and I'm approaching the end of my college life, and with that comes the fear of, hey, how do I stay connected with people, and how do I continue to connect with more people? And another thing just popped up. It was, once again, a church activity through Ada Bible, and in this case, it was more for people my own age, young adults, And I was like, I don't know if I can actually do this because I got this crazy job going on right now. I got full-time school, lots of homework. I'm already doing this volunteer work, leading a small group of middle schoolers. I was just starting to pile on activity after activity, and I was starting to think I need to let some go. But the weird thing was, I just wrote it off. I emailed one person like, hey, I'd be kind of interested in one of the small groups for young adults, but I don't know. And I got a reply a couple weeks ago, literally 2, about being on Monday nights. And I was like, hey, I can actually make that. Fits perfectly into an empty slot on my schedule. Huh, that's weird. Nothing ever does that. And I went, and I met some people that I've never met in my life. And once again, that newfounded extrovertedness was like, hey, I'm gonna talk to these people and I'm gonna make some really, really strong initial connections. And, well, that was this week. And I'm kind of looking forward to next week Monday so I can figure out and meet more of them. And so I can talk about God with them. And that's where I'm at the moment. And I was kind of asked today randomly if I could give this testimony, but the thing is, I'm still not sure where my testimony is going. It's still being written, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm now seeing God in a lot more of the things that have happened to me, and the way I'm handling things has changed, and I'm hoping that continues to change for the better. And one day I can tell you what the full testimony is, but I wonder if any of us can really tell our full testimony.